as a freelancer or whatever you are deciding to do, it's going to have things you don't like and that you don't enjoy, but do you generally enjoy it? Is it bringing you joy? And are you doing it for the right reasons?
Today on the Freelance Mindset Studio podcast, we're joined by Divya Chhabra. Divya is, wait for it, a filmmaker, an advisor, a writer, and she has produced and advised on Emmy-nominated shows at Nickelodeon and Apple TV and on live-action video games and indie films, including The Great Northern, starring Megan Suri. Her essays and op-eds have appeared in Teen Vogue, ABC News, and the Huffington Post. And now, wait for it, she is also a doctor, a psychiatrist, NYU professor, and she runs a nonprofit clinic in Harlem. Divya, thank you for joining.
Hey, great to see you, Joy.
What a path you have. I think we need to first take a moment to appreciate that this path exists. And was this always your plan?
That's a great question. And the funny thing is, I met Joy back in 2019 at a Brown Girl Mag event. And I think at that event I could have never imagined that this is how it would unfold. But I didn't think that I always had this plan. There was a certain point when I became a doctor where I wasn't sure whether I should have become a doctor or if it really was the right path for me. When I was in college, I did not see other South Asian people doing creative things. And so it wasn't even that I was like forced into medicine. My parents weren't like, you have to be a doctor. But I didn't see certain things, and maybe in a more subconscious way, as something as a possibility for me. I like being a psychiatrist a lot. I don't know how much I really enjoyed the rest of medicine. It is the most sort of artistic of the medical fields. You're really integrating people's stories every day when you're doing therapy or even making a decision about medications. And it was really when I was in residency, I did a rotation at San Quentin State Prison where it was therapy focused, but through writing poetry, and it was with death row. And so I found that experience to be very inspiring, and I had to use that side of my brain, and I realized like I really like this, I want to do something more creative, and I very intentionally then proceeded to do my fellowship. So I did adult psychiatry and then further specialized in child psychiatry. So I moved to New York thinking like, okay, that's a place where people are doing all different kinds of things. And I didn't know what my creative future held, but I tried a lot of different things until I found something that stuck.
Wow. So going from medicine to me seems like one of the most linear of career tracks because you have to start planning almost a decade, maybe even earlier before you actually go to medical school. And then many, many years before you even start practicing and seeing patients, my understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what you have today seems to me like more of a portfolio career, which is kind of the opposite of linear. What was that shift like for you in going from medicine into a more broad career that incorporates storytelling and the arts?
It's funny because I was literally, sometimes when I go to these film events, I feel like slightly like, whoa, this is so different, because in medicine it's kind of like, okay, you did your rotations, now you're going to take your step, and then you're going to like make your application, you're going to apply to residency, then you have like these 6 choices after residency. And I think at the time I found it very like claustrophobic, because that's just not my personality. I'm not like I'm more an off the beaten path kind of person. But now I'm kind of like, oh, that was kind of nice. Like I kind of wish I had that.
Yeah.
Like I wish film would do that. But I think I have also learned a lot by kind of just going on my own path and learning that there's sort of like this balance that you have to have between having spontaneity and unpredictability, and then also using some of the strategies that I use in medicine that are more predictable. So I can give you an example.
Yeah.
When I first wanted to do something creative, first I did this fellowship called the Watering Hole Poetry Fellowship, and I really loved writing poetry. I still write poetry, but I didn't see it as something that I would have a career in per se. It would more inform other things I was doing. So this trial and error process. Then after that, I started freelance writing and pitching to different media outlets. And there's this rotation that you can apply to as part of a medical fellowship at ABC News. So they have like a med news unit that they bring on doctors to write for. And so I used that as a segue into writing. While I was there, I pitched a lot of pieces that were like way more up my alley of what I was interested in writing about, that like peripherally related to medicine. One of the pieces I wrote was about, can reparations for Black Americans and also for Pacific Islanders, can it change health outcomes? I also did another one about these respondents to 911 calls. And it's funny, an article just came out today about 988, the new crisis hotline, and how youth suicide has gone down 11% because of like literally having 988 instead of 911.
Wow.
That's for a different podcast, but my
Yeah.
point was that I kind of like use what you learn in med school about how to get to the next place as like a way to get to a place. But then
Mhm.
I kind of use spontaneity to then be like, okay, this isn't exactly how I want to be in this place. So how do I use the resources? Like, how do I not take no for an answer and find a way to do it? And then sometimes just one thing leads to another more spontaneously. For example, when I worked at Nick Jr., that really came from a cold LinkedIn message to someone who worked at the company. And then
You
basically I
sent the
took over.
message.
Yeah, I sent the
Yeah. Wow.
message. I do think when you do cold LinkedIn messages, you have to have like some reason. I find that it doesn't go as well when you're like, I'm just interested in this, but I don't have any
Mhm.
experience in this. Because then they're going to be getting a lot of those. But basically, I was like, I'm a child psychiatrist. I understand kids. Here's some projects. I had done a little bit of my own media work and media projects when I worked at the Office of Mental Health, but it was smaller scale. So then I used that as a way to be like, here, I have this background. This is how my background could be useful in this. And then we met on Zoom around the time the message happened. And then 9 months later, they asked me to meet again, and that was because someone was going on maternity leave. So then I ended up working at Noggin, which is Nickelodeon's kids app that uses Nick Jr. IP. So then that came to fruition from
Yeah, and
kids
just to
media.
pause there, I want to
Yeah,
emphasize that was 9 months. Like the cycle time of this is so much
yeah,
longer than we think. It wasn't just cold DM on LinkedIn and then the next day you show up at Nickelodeon's office. Like
yeah.
these things plan over years and even decades, I assume.
Yeah, I think that's what's so different about these linear careers. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm applying on this day for this, and on this day, I will find out whether I got into this. Whereas here, it's like, I'll go to a coffee with someone and I'll be like, why am I going on this coffee? Like, does this have a point? And then I
Yeah.
kind of have to go back to like, well, you're going to enjoy it. You always end up having like good conversation, and you never
Yeah.
know where it's going to go. It could be nothing. It could end up in to like a new project that turns into a bunch of other projects. It could just end up into like a nice friendship. So I think having that kind of mix of plan and spontaneity really helps. And like at Nickelodeon, then when I worked at Noggin, like then people at Nickelodeon met me, and that was how I started consulting on the kids shows. And then
Mm.
now work in like live narrative film and narrative indie film as well. It's easy for me to talk about it now, but during that process, it was very like, what is going on? Like
Yeah,
it
why isn't
was,
this happening? Like things aren't
yeah,
moving forward,
yeah.
probably. But they did. It took time. So I think that's really fascinating because we do need that balance between strategy and spontaneity all the time. I think you probably need it in medicine as well, even if we're not talking about it as
Mhm.
much.
Mhm.
How did you learn this? Because you mentioned in the beginning that we didn't have a lot of role models. You didn't, I didn't see either people in my community with a portfolio career that I would recognize as one today. So how did this part unfold for you?
I do think that I've always been someone who had a lot of hobbies, or my outlet to feeling a lack of control in certain parts of my life. The way that I coped with that was to find things I really like to do. And so that's given me this. I remember my therapist at once called it a zeal for the world. I felt like I wanted to have these experiences, or I wanted to do these things. And honestly, sometimes I'm like, okay, you need to slow down. Like my boyfriend will
Yeah.
be like, you need to slow down. Like something has happened in your personal life that's making you do all these projects, and like
Where
you
does
need to
this
slow
come from?
down. Maybe you need to reflect on the thing that's happening. But then there's other times where I think it's actually very therapeutic for me to seek out these things that I really love and enjoy doing. It's wanting to learn something new, wanting to do something where I feel a sense of community. And so I think that childhood skill that I had, and I think also as immigrants, I grew up in very not diverse white neighborhoods in both California and
Yeah.
Texas. But I was always going to India. I traveled into a lot as a child, and then also used to go to the temple. So I had some Indian community. But I learned to code switch, and I learned to observe and learn and then decide how I'm going to do something.
Yeah.
A lot of spaces, even in high school, were not designed for me, or I was not immediately accepted into those spaces. And I had to kind of learn
Yeah.
how to not take no for an answer and figure out if I want to do that, if I really love that, like I'm going to do that. I mean, I'm thinking just from examples of like dance in high school.
Right.
And so I think navigating all those different worlds for so long is hard, but it's like an asset. And then over time, there was an imposter syndrome that I got over. And so I think that combined with like actually feeling more confidence in myself, and then meeting community like you and other people. And in New York, I've been able to meet a really nice mix of different creative people and creative communities, a lot of whom are also South Asian. And
Mm.
there's something special about that, I think, in us working together. but I'm still
Yeah.
like trial and error, you know?
Totally, totally. That really
Yeah.
resonates with me as well. I was a third culture kid, and then I grew up after the third culturing in New Hampshire, and it was very not diverse. We were pre Instagram and Facebook and all the information that we have today. And I think that learning to be the odd one out early was uncomfortable at the time, but I think it
Hmm.
allowed me to kind of tune into the things that I was interested in, find a time and place for them, and then continue to do that, even if I didn't necessarily see a role model doing exactly what I wanted to do. So it did become an asset in the end, even if it was a little bit challenging in the beginning. And it's challenging today. It always will be, right? So I want to pivot a little bit because you were doing so many amazing things in medicine and you were also blazing new trails in film. And I believe you've just produced a short film called Awkward Goodbyes, which this is the premise. Guessing goes wrong when two chaotic lovers buy a lottery ticket on the final day of their vacation romance. That sounds incredible. I need to go see that immediately. Tell me about this project and how you ended up finding your way into it.
Sure, yeah. Well, I started and was consulting on some Nickelodeon kids TV shows, and then I through that got connected to like the indie film The Great Northern that you had mentioned,
Yeah.
with Megan Suri in it, and consulting on that. I initially started out as a consultant on mental health related topics. So The Great Northern has a lot of grief in it. So I started helping out with the grief topics, and then with some of the kids TV shows, it was like talking about what social and emotional learning skills needed to come from the show. And then through that, I got a big exposure into what producing is, into what directing is, and all the different elements of what it is to make a production happen. So I wanted to produce something myself. And so through that, I met Allie. She's the director of Awkward Goodbyes. It was kind of go as you learn, and we made the film. We started in, I think, February of last year, and then we shot in June. We did casting, all of that, hired all the heads of departments, and then did post production, and then everything was finished by January. It took about a year, and now we're
Mhm.
applying to film festivals. The film features an Italian American woman and an Indian guy who's visiting. So it's a very whirlwind romance. So to us, it was like interesting, like to think about love in this period of time. It's unclear what's happening with visas and timelines in these situations and what that does to like romantic partnerships.
Mhm.
And we also wanted to have like a female character who has the kind of personality that's not often portrayed in films. And then the Indian character, the protagonist, Veer, we wanted it to be a film that was not about the fact that he was South Asian. So when I was at Nickelodeon, there was research being done about like what kids and teens, like minority kids and teens, wanted to see in film, and they wanted not stereotypes, but they also wanted two different types of things. They wanted some film that was actually like that movie Nice Indian Boy.
Mhm.
It's a great film. It's directly about the fact that he is Indian and that he's queer, and that's a kind of a lot of what the film is about. There is a lot of that out there, and it's very needed. It helps people process their own stories and feel seen and heard. And there's a little bit more of a dearth of films that just feature
Mhm.
like a minority character, whether it's race, gender, sexuality, whatever. That is not the topic of the film. So like if you think of like any rom-com, like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, whatever movie, if the character is white, they're not like explaining his background. Like he just
Yeah.
exists as the status quo. So that was one of my goals with this film, was to have an Indian protagonist who that is the main character, and we do not need to explain it, and it's not about the fact that he's Indian, but there were sort of like indirect elements. And that was where my DEI background was helpful, of how to show like that he was Indian. So for example, they go to the bodega at one scene, and he's buying like a ton of Sour Patch Kids because like his cousins asked for it in India.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and certain like he has like a ribbon tied around his suitcase because
Mhm.
like that's how we identify our bags. There's no one Indian experience, but I tried to put in things that like different Indians could relate to more indirectly.
And was this your first time producing?
I had produced before, but more in the podcast realm.
Mhm.
I had produced two podcasts. One of them was a kids podcast, one wasn't. And this was my first time producing an actual film completely and being the sole producer. Yeah.
Wow. What was that like?
It was definitely a whirlwind. It was a big learning experience. I think that I was able to get a lot of advice and mentorship from like peers, and Ali and I worked very closely together. We wore a lot of different hats, both of us. It was a short film, it was an indie film, we did a Kickstarter, but we really both had to do a lot of different roles. She also helped with some of the producing, I helped with script consultation and things like that. And so it was definitely challenging, but now I feel like I came out of it really knowing everything that needs to be done. And also, I think a lot of the skills from being a psychiatrist were so translatable, like being able to look at a script, and this is more creative producing, but to be able to look at a script and kind of understand the relationships and the character development, and then to also be able to, like, when you're interviewing people, like, know if someone is the right fit for the project, and on set, if there's different conflicts, like helping to navigate those. And then also just in medicine, you go to residency and you're kind of thrown in, and honestly, it's scary for the patient. Like,
Yeah.
residents, like, you're afraid you're going to kill someone, so you're like hyper paying attention. You're not really sleeping. So this kind of felt like it's not life and death, but the same analytical skills I learned to just figure out how to do something in medicine, I use those same skills to like produce, basically. Yeah.
Wow. So there's two things that I'm really inspired by as you're telling this story. One is your ability to just find transferable skills between fields. I think that's one of the reasons you've been so generative and able to cross over and do so many different things, because what you learn in medicine does teach you how to be a better producer and vice versa. Producing can't teach you all of medicine, but it can certainly improve aspects of your delivery. So that's one thing. And the second thing that really inspires me is your willingness to go be the new person again and start from the beginning, which can be really hard, especially for a professional. I'm saying this as a lawyer. There are rooms that I walk into as a lawyer where I'm doing something that I've done for over a decade now. And then I kind of know the rhythm of how it's done, and I feel like an expert in those moments. And then to go to another room like podcast, hello, this is episode 5 or 6. This is brand new for me, and it's fun, but it's a new challenge. What helps you as you're going into a room where you're starting to be the new person all over again?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And like, you're catching me on a good day. So I'm not, I had like a recent coffee that led to a cool project, but sometimes that's not what happens. But I think the way that I navigate it is a few different things. One is this concept actually in therapy called riding the wave that I use with clients that I think is helpful for myself, is like, whenever you have a bad feeling or like you feel a certain way, if you just write it out, like, it's going to end. And you can remind yourself, like, well, last time that ended. So last time I felt like, why am I here? Like, I'm a loser. That feeling ended. And so it's like, even if I can't stop the fact that I'm feeling it right now, like, I know it's going to end because it ended the last 5 times. Or like, something is going to happen, like, I will get something, and sort of like relinquishing some level of control. So that's one thing that I use to help myself. I think finding the positive in it, not meaning don't allow yourself to feel bad or like vent about the negative elements, but sort of that, I grew up in culturally, we're like, you're going to notice the negative, but if something's positive, you just are like, okay. And so actually acknowledging the positive and saying it out loud and writing it down, like writing down my gratitude, actually helps me have a more even outlook rather than just focus on what needs to be fixed or is negative. And so one of the positives for me is, I'm checking in with myself. Maybe I'm not enjoying being the new person, but every time I'm the new person, after I cut the lay of the land, I like love it and I enjoy it. So like recently, I took a directing class because one of the shorts that I'm working on, the lead actor is directing, and so I'm gonna direct actors while he's acting. And it felt like the first session I was like, oh my god, I don't know what any of these terms are. And then it started to feel like, if I actually think of this as like an opportunity and experience that I'm like riding the wave with, it helps. So that kind of positivity, and I think it's humbling. I also realize when I'm in a situation where it becomes like the back of my hand, I actually don't like that. I feel kind of bored. Yeah. So that novelty is something that for me professionally I enjoy, and I think that's something that's important, is like whatever you as a freelancer or whatever you are deciding to do, I think it's so important to make sure that the thing that you are deciding to do, it's going to have things you don't like and that you don't enjoy. But do you generally enjoy it? Is it bringing you joy? Are you doing it for the right reasons? And that kind of has helped me decide, I'm going to do this and not that, or this and not that.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things that from an outsider's perspective that may have helped you is being a doctor where you were a resident and you were afraid that, a patient might die on your watch. That's very terrifying. All the new things you're learning now are scary and they're hard, but they're not life or death. And I think that
Hmm.
perspective probably helps you a lot, where I, as a non-doctor, don't have that quite yet. But I really do admire your ability to stay curious and continually learn and stretch yourself. I think that's the key to just continuing to excel in all of your professions. I have a question, because you have multiple professions and they're all fitting together in a way. How do you make sense of them for yourself? Like, do you feel like you have several professions, or do you feel like they're laddering up to one unified identity? And then how do you convey that at
Yeah.
like a cocktail party when someone asks, what do you
Hmm.
do?
That is another great question that I've been struggling with. So I can tell you the saga of my website. Like I used to have a
Yeah.
well, I have a website and it has different tabs, and then like I had my psychiatrist tab on there for a while, and then for a while when I would go to things, I would feel like I was sort of being like, well, why are you doing this? Like if you are a psychiatrist, or like even when I was writing for news, it was like, but how does that relate to psychiatry or to health or
Yeah.
medicine? If I like wanted to just write about a TV show, like I wanted to review a TV show. And to me, it's like all of these different things, especially psychiatry, it's like every piece of art is a commentary on the mind or relationships. And to me, that's what psychiatry is. It's not like you have depression, so we're going to give you Prozac. That is part of psychiatry, but it's more just like understanding the brain or the mind and relationships, which is what everything is about. And so I guess two-part questions to answer. The first part is I took the psychiatry part off my website, but then like I think I added it back like a while later because I kind of learned to integrate the two things. And I actually I used ChatGPT the other day to help me explain what I do for films, or
Whoa.
at least like particularly right now the kinds of projects I'm looking for, because I am toying with directing and other skills, but in the realm of producing. And so I can just read out what I came
Yeah.
up with, and I'll answer the question and then I have a second part. But basically, I said, I'm a New York City based writer and creative producer focused on psychologically rich, character driven film and television. I come from a background in psychiatry and mental health leadership, which shapes the kinds of emotionally complex, underrepresented stories I'm drawn to develop. And then I recently produced a short, and I'm currently directing a proof of concept piece. So I don't say it exactly like that. I mean, that sounds like ChatGPT wrote it, but that's
Yeah.
what I used. I read it when I'm in the Uber before I get there so I can say it more casually. And it actually has helped to explain it that way and make that connection now that I have more projects under my belt.
Mm.
That's kind of what you're talking about, like feeling new. I think it was hard for me to feel new and then say that about myself. But now that I have done other things, and maybe I should have been able to say it about myself, or would have liked to have been able to do it that way. But I feel like more recently I've been able to present that way, and it is true. That is who I am, and it is authentic to who I am. But to be able to explain it in a confident way has been helpful. That being said, you mentioned like career wise.
Hmm.
My answer for that is like I don't know. Like so
Yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes I think that ideally I would have some kind of job that combines everything,
Hmm.
but I don't know that that exists. And I had come across this quote that was like, when people from different fields like come together to relinquish silos, like new fields are actually created. And
Hmm.
if you think about the last 15 years, like so many new fields have been created. And I haven't found a job that like combines writing and film and psychiatry in a way that I could just like apply for. Like I can't even really envision what that would be. Right
Hmm.
now, what I can envision is continuing to do mental health leadership, and I do some global health stuff, continuing to do that, and then having a lot of these creative gigs on the side.
Yeah.
And, sort of having that gratitude for the fact that the medicine, like, it makes money, and then I can do projects that I want to do, but eventually I want to turn it into maybe like two different part-time things. But being
Hmm.
okay with the fact that like I don't know and I'm not too old to not know, because sometimes I feel that way, yeah.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of pressure to have it figured out. And I think there's been pressure to have it figured out, gosh, since like high school, maybe freshman year of college was you got a little bit of grace, but it's always, you want to be at the destination and here's my tidy one-liner. And it
Mm-hmm.
turns out it's really much more of a process. So that's awesome that ChatGPT helped you come up with an outsider's perspective of how all the different things you do fit together.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to try that later. So that makes sense in terms of work, and this is my professional identity or set of identities. What about fun? I think I'm having a new problem where I couldn't answer what do you do for work, and then finally I like figured that out, and now people are asking me what do you do for fun, and I've now turned everything I do into a job of some sort. So I'm going to ask you, what do you do for fun?
I think that one of the benefits of psychiatry is that there is a level of flexibility, and especially like I work in child psychiatry right now. I do some adult stuff. Like the kids get a lot of their therapy and things after school, so I have like these like open mornings. It doesn't sound believable, but I actually have time to have fun. But I had to figure out how to do that. It took me a while to figure out how to have fun and how to like pace myself and not need to do everything all at once. And I think like having different phases of my life, like sometimes I'll have a lot of projects and sometimes I won't have as many projects, and I don't have kids yet. And so like I think having sort of different phases of my life, like when I first moved to New York, I invested a lot more into sort of like solidifying my friend group. And now I've been in New York for 7 years, and it's the first time I've lived somewhere for more than 4 years, like since I was in high school.
Yeah, wow.
That was like so meaningful to me, I realized. So I feel like I have just like friends that we go each other's places, cook for each other, hang out. And then for fun, I dance once a week, and then I go rock climbing for fun. Like, so right now I'm doing, there's like an annual dance recital at my dance studio. I've never done the dance recital before, and I signed up for it this year. And it's like more intense than I expected there. I mean, there are some very legit dancers in this class. And like, I grew up dancing, but I'm not a professional dancer. And it's been like, it has been I have to be like, this is fun, Divya, like, it's okay if like you weren't put in that part, or like, you messed up a
Yeah.
little. So it is like, sometimes I have to remind myself of that, but I've always been able to have fun, but I think it's like nice because of the way that I've set things up. I don't think I had that much fun when I was, or like I like forced myself to go do stuff, and then I was exhausted when I was in
Yeah.
residency. But now, yeah, dance, hanging out with friends. I love art. I'm not a huge fan of cooking, but I will do it if it's like a group that's fun for me to do it as a group activity. And just going out, I still like to go out. I like wine and cheese. So I think it's so important to have fun, and also, especially in the creative world, there's this overlap. I'll go for a drink with someone that I met, and I forget that was actually kind of work, I guess, but it was fun. And then sometimes you end up just making new friends that maybe it turns into something else, but it was really just to have fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Your schedule must be packed. And I think you mentioned in residency, you would be tired and then you would still force yourself to go out. How do you manage your energy now?
I sleep more
Yeah,
than I
real.
used to in residency. I don't take like I moonlight at Bellevue. I don't take any overnight shifts. I don't take any weekend shifts. I have like very
Mm.
specific boundaries. So my weekends, I really don't work much on the weekend. I think each person it's different, but for me, I'm okay with working in the evening during the week. If I'm working on a project, and obviously in film, sometimes you have to work on the weekends, like when you're shooting something, but I tend to like really take weekends for myself and just to have fun. It's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. Like, okay, I want to do this. These are like weddings and different things I have to go to this year. These are the fun trips I want to do. Let me put everything in, and then the rest. I have like protected time, and that like helps me. It's not even, it doesn't feel like I'm forcing it because it's like already there. It's almost like a habit. There's like a routine within all this madness. There is a routine.
I think that's a really important point because it seems like there's a lot packed in, and there is a lot packed in, but you can do that when you've built in rest, when you've built in space, when you're enjoying the work you do and not forcing yourself to do it. I genuinely do think you're taking on all these opportunities because each one adds something to your life and it is exciting work. No one is making you do it. So that structure makes sense. And I am now starting to rethink like my strategy of doing a lot of my writing and work on the weekends. What if I actually just rested on the weekend and did those on weeknights? That
Yeah,
might be
you
better.
should try it out. Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
like sometimes Sunday night I'll do stuff, but I really try to have protected. That was something I learned in residency because I realized how much you had to work on the weekend sometimes, and I realized how much I hated that.
That's really smart. I'm really going to try that. Yeah. So now to wrap, I'm curious, are there any projects that you'd like to tell the audience about that we haven't talked about already?
Sure, yeah. So I have a Substack that I write with a friend called Double Take, with a zero as the O, and we just pick a topic, and we both write in whatever format and whatever way we want to write about. Like it'll be like one word. We'll just both write, and then we post it. And we went on a bit of a hiatus, but we're thinking about starting that up again soon. And then I'm working on 2 film projects right now. And I'm producing 2 different projects, and one of them I'll be co-directing. So one of them is a narrative short with a friend of mine who I really love, who's going to be returning from Nepal soon. And it's called Frozen Hues. And I don't want to say much about it, but I can tell you that it involves a South Asian mother-daughter relationship and some kind of sci-fi where you can reincarnate a soul into a frozen embryo. So I'll leave that there. And then I'm also producing a short web series. I would describe it as a coming of age web series about women of color in their late 30s and 40s in New York. So like a lot of things we've seen before, but how often do you see something that's like coming of age for someone in their 30s and for minority population? So I'm really excited for that as well.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch both of those when they're ready. Where on the internet can people find you?
So you can find me on my website, www.divyachhabra. The last name has 2 H's in it, .com. And on that website, there's a link to the Awkward Goodbyes website where you can learn more about that film. The films are not available online yet because right now we are doing the film circuit, the festival circuit. And then my Instagram is dchobs. So give me an ad and see what I'm up to.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Divya, for joining. I've learned so much, and I'm sure everyone has too.
Thanks. It was so great to chat and looking forward to dancing together soon.